Today I'm going to be talking about the Boston Common. Why? Well, the last time we were in Boston, we technically passed by the Common briefly, but I wouldn't say we actually visited it. And this time around, we're living just a block away from it, so I take the dog there every morning, I walk through the Common every time I go to work, and there's a playground there that we've taken our son to multiple times. So for those who may not know, what is the Boston Common? It's simply a park located in the middle of Boston. It's fairly small, only 50 acres, which to put that in perspective, Central Park in New York is 840 acres. It may not be impressive size-wise, but it has a lot of history. Since we're comparing the two, it predates Central Park by over 200 years. It is so old that it bears the title of the oldest public park in America. If you walk through the Common, every time you see a sign bearing the park's name, underneath it reads, "Founded 1634. This was the year that Puritan colonists purchased the rights to the Common, which at that time was simply a pasture, and used it for grazing livestock. This was its primary purpose for the next 200 years. Of course, during that time it served other purposes as well. A large tree in the Common was used by the Puritans to execute hangings, and during the British occupation of Boston in 1775, the Common was used as a camping ground for redcoats. It was in the 1800s that the area really stopped being used to house the community's cows and made the transition to the more traditional park that we see today. It's been the home to many gatherings, rallies, protests, seeing such famous figures as Martin Luther King Jr. and Pope John Paul II. To be honest, the Common, although filled with history at first glance, really just looks like an ordinary park. If you walk around, you'll notice some statues and monuments. One of the most noticeable stands on Flagstaff Hill, called the Soldiers and Sailors Monument. It's a column of granite that was dedicated in 1877 as a remembrance for the Massachusetts soldiers and sailors who died in the American Civil War. On top of the column is a bronze female figure entitled America. Her tiara has 13 stars, and she holds the United States flag in one hand and a laurel wreath and sword in the other. At the base of the monument are 4 other bronze statues, all meant to represent peace. On the eastern side of the park, near Park Street Church, is Brewer Fountain. It's named after Gardner Brewer, a wealthy Boston merchant who gifted it to the city in 1868. The bronze statues of the fountain represent various figures from Greek mythology. You can find some newer statues in the park as well. 3 statues sit along the perimeter of the Parkman Plaza, representing learning, industry, and religion. These were commissioned for the park in 1993. A little more centrally located in the park, you will find the Parkman Bandstand. Standing fairly isolated, a bandstand built in 1912. It's named after George F. Parkman, a member of one of the wealthiest families in Boston. His father, George Parkman, was a doctor who donated land for Harvard Medical School's first campus. On the south side of the park is a small cemetery called Central Burying Ground, established in 1756. Famous burials here include Gilbert Stuart, famed painter of portraits of George and Martha Washington, a famous composer, William Billings, and Samuel Sprague, one of America's earliest poets. There are other smaller sculptures and monuments to be found as well. The Declaration of Independence tablet sits on the east side of the park and was installed in 1925. The Boston Massacre Monument, also on the east side of the park, was dedicated in 1889. It's a column with a bronze sculpture of a female figure that represents the spirit of the Revolution, with an eagle perched at her feet. There's a bronze sculpture on the north side of the park that depicts the founding of Boston in 1630, as well as a couple other sculptures and tablets dotted around the park. There are other non-historical sites in the park as well. There are baseball fields, tennis courts, the Frog Pond, which is converted into an ice skating rink in the winter. The T, Boston subway system, runs underneath the Common, and in fact, Boylston Station, a stop on the Green Line located in the southeast corner of the park, was the first underground rapid transit station in the U.S. It opened in 1897. So yes, obviously the Boston Common houses centuries of our country's history, but when you walk through it, it just looks like an ordinary park. Zigzagging paths lined with benches, you'll find this place absolutely packed on a weekend if the weather is nice. Our son loves the playground, which is just next to Frog Pond. It's been nice to live downtown during our stay in Boston this time. The little things like walking through the Common every day let you feel like you're connecting to the city's history. Anyway, thanks for listening to my little review of the Boston Common. We'll see you next week in another video. Bye.